Hey, this is Artie Aster from B Sharp and C. I'm in the mood to do another song from the Japanese band Wagakki. And one of the reasons why is because someone commented on my last video that I released a few days ago, and they were a little rude, and it's weird because I first of all, I try to get bands from all over the world to react to, right? And many times I get bands and I react to bands whose culture I'm not 100% familiar with. So I'm going to use terms, words, and phrases that might show my ignorance, right? And there we go. And a couple weeks ago, I did this reaction to the Wagakki band, and someone came out and said, "Well, you're late to the party. You know, they broke up." And I researched it, and out of all the research I did, they didn't break up. They're doing an indefinite hiatus so that each member can work on their solo projects, but they have every intention of getting back together. And there was another, and that same person commented that my use of terms could be confusing and even insulting. I called some instruments indigenous instead of traditional, and I called some instruments traditional instead of modern. And I agree that my use of terms probably was a little misleading and confusing, but offensive. The fact that I'm trying to get into a multicultural reaction, doing bands from Japan, bands from Korea, bands from Nordic, lands and everything. Just that alone, I would think that people would look at that and say that I'm not trying to be offensive to any one culture, that I'm actually trying to just check out world music. But yes, because I'm not Japanese, I am going to get terms wrong. But I did a little bit of research and I think that it's actually worth mentioning. Let me see if I can find it here. So let me just see if I can share this. All right, so this three-stringed instrument here that was used in the song that I reacted to, I believe it's called the sanction. You know what? Hold on a second. All my research is still here. The sanction, often misheard as shanxian, is a deeply indigenous Chinese instrument. So it's indigenous to China. So the Japanese were using it, but it's actually considered an indigenous Chinese instrument. So I actually wasn't wrong when I mentioned that, but to a degree I was too, because Japanese people, and this is again, I'm not Japanese, so I can only go by the research I do, but the Japanese people refer to that as a traditional Japanese instrument, and I actually agree with that. In fact, the word wagakki means traditional Japanese musical instruments, which is the name of the band. So they themselves consider what they're doing is as traditional Japanese music, and they do mix that in with a lot of heavy rock, or some might even consider it metal and modern instrumentation. So, as I was reacting and trying to think of words off the top of my head, I might have gotten a few terms mixed up. I might have called something indigenous that wasn't, or something modern or traditional that wasn't. And I do apologize for that. It's never my intention to come out and say something that might be misunderstood or misconstrued as being offensive. But I tend to think that the people that listen to my channel are good reasoning people, and they would see by context that I'm not trying to be I'm not trying to be offensive. Now, did the Wagakki band break up? No, they did not break up. They went on an indefinite hiatus at the end of 2024, so just recently, to allow members to focus on solo projects, concluding their 10th anniversary year, right? Something else too. So someone mentioned, the same person mentioned, would I consider the hurdy-gurdy an indigenous instrument? And from what I can understand, it is not an indigenous instrument, but we have to take a look at something here. And this is really interesting, and I'm sorry if this is boring to anyone, but the word indigenous has actually a lot of meanings. For instance, We could be at a zoo and see a kangaroo and say that the kangaroo is indigenous to Australia, right? It is from Australia. Um, you- so in some respect, if someone is in the United States playing the hurdy-gurdy, it's not an indigenous instrument in the United States, but it is indigenous to the Middle East going back centuries, right? So I think sometimes we can get caught up in the meanings of words and what comes out of someone's mouth, and I hate to have to make a video like this to explain myself and maybe, and even to apologize if I did offend anyone, but I actually don't think that anyone would take offense. Maybe someone who's an English major would look at what I said and be like, oh, he's getting his terms mixed up, and it might be a little bit irritating to someone. But I think it's blaringly obvious that I'm not trying to, throw shade on any one culture or the other. I'm trying to be as inclusive as possible. In fact, I love the fact that some of the best music that I'm finding nowadays is actually not music from the United States, but music from other countries. Like this song here, this is Bring Me to Life with, of course, the Wagakki band, but it also has Amy Lee of Evanescence. I never say this word right. Evanescence being featured in the song. So let's go ahead and listen to this and react to it, and I will try not to hurt anyone's feelings. Mm.
How can you see into my eyes like open doors, leading you down
Beautiful.
into my core, where I become so numb without a song. My spirit is needing somewhere gone until you find it there and lead it back home.
Wow. I'm going to go back. I just like that stop right there. Something that I've always, so far, everything that I've heard from the Wagakki band, they're, I don't know how to explain it. I just love the fact that that the engineering is so good. All right, that's going to be super hard, in my opinion. It's going to be super hard to engineer this flute right here. Only because by nature, these types of flutes are just not that loud. So you have to really ramp up the volume or the levels on that channel without having it too loud, right? Because sometimes in order to get a quieter instrument to be in the mix with the rest of the instruments, you got to turn up the levels really loud. And if the settings are off, if the equalization is off, if you have too much gain over here, whatever the case is, you could actually have feedback and static and that airy sound, But it's just fit into the mix really nice. You get the cellists in the back there. I want to know what instrument this is here. It's like a harp, but like laid down. I don't know what that is. Man. Look at that audience. It's just amazing to see. And I love how the lights are off. So everyone with their, I mean, I don't know if it's their phones turned on. I really don't know. It doesn't look like phones, but it's just cool. It looks like a, I don't know. So I remember one night I think it was Cape Cod up in Massachusetts. And I'm walking along this jetty and I looked into the water and there were all these jellyfish and they all lit up and it looked just like this. I'm telling you, it was just like hundreds, maybe thousands of jellyfish in the same area. Fortunately, I didn't fall in the water because it would have been very painful. But just looking down, it looked like you were looking up at the night sky, but you were looking into the water. It was so surreal. And that's what looking at this right here reminds me of. So he's playing that thing. So his left hand does not have any picks. His right hand has like picks on the fingers. That's a very interesting instrument. I got to look that up. Well, I can look up like Japanese harp, and I bet you that'll come up. French horn or something. Wow. What a production. Oh, they're glow sticks. Okay, cool.
ご和楽器バンドありがとうありがとうございます皆さん大きな声援で
ありがとうございます。
Wow. That was just something, and the amount of work put into that. And when you have a whole orchestra, a lot of times, and this is something that hold on a second, let me turn this light on. And this is something that I watch a lot of interviews with other musicians and Joe Bonamassa during COVID, he had this thing, I think it was called Live from Nerdville or something like that, where he interviewed different musicians. And it's the band. It comes out of their budget. It's the band that pays the orchestra, the conductor, everyone playing all these instruments, whether it's French horns, cellos, flutes, So when you have a big production like that, the band is making a sacrifice. They're actually taking less money for themselves so that they can give a fuller production for the audience and everything. So I like seeing that because no, I'm not subscribed. Let me subscribe to the Wagakki band. So I really do like seeing that. But anyways, yeah, I just thought that was fantastic. For the most part, wanted to do another Wagakki band reaction because I wanted to clarify anything and get it out there that if I did bother anyone with my incorrect use of terms in my first video. I do apologize. It's never my intention to offend anybody. Um, but I think what we see here is just amazing. It's a great mix. You didn't see it as much here, and it wasn't featured as much here, as far as like we didn't have any flute solos and sanctioned solos and all that stuff, or shamisen. It depends if it's in Japanese or Chinese. I think it's sanctioned if it's Chinese, and shamisen if it's Japanese. That three-stringed instrument. It wasn't necessarily featured. There weren't a lot of instrumentation or traditional Japanese instruments being featured, or solos in this song here, but it was nice to see everything there together. I don't know. I just thought this was really good. If you have anything that you want to recommend, put it in the comment section. I do read the comments. As you can see, this is basically a reaction to someone commenting. And you know what? I took it as them being a little snotty and being a little rude. But I understand when you're sitting behind the keyboard commenting on YouTube, it's like road rage. You say things that you wouldn't say to somebody's face. You're a little bit more brave than if you were looking at someone's face. So I get it. The person was probably just bothered and was like, okay, okay. But I am encouraged to read that from all of my research, that the Wagakki band didn't break up. That they actually, from what I can read, from what's reported, it seems as though they're working on some solo stuff, but they have all intention of getting back together and continuing to make great music. So, anyways, let me know what you think in the comment section, and until next time, keep it groovy.